complicated opening, Charles.
That's right. We got to.
No, I've got precautions for us here. You got to be careful with this PPE, Charles.
Exactly
it doesn't
right.
grow on trees.
Exactly right. I mean, I have to congratulate the long-suffering art department. I mean, this is a masterpiece. I don't know what should be featured most prominently in the forthcoming eventual book.
Right.
But I mean, take the viewers through the masterpiece here. I mean, this is just incredible, Jason.
Well, thank you, Charles. And actually, this is a suggestion from a long-standing viewer, so we have to thank that anonymous person for making such a great suggestion, because we were a little bit lost. It's interesting always, Charles, how people out there in the internet universe feel that they somehow understand our process better than we do, but we were stuck for an idea today. And what we've got here is, of course, the bigger problem than coronavirus is that America has been idle for, 2 months?
Close to 2 months, yeah. It's 6 weeks or so, yeah.
It's totally unknown what the actual effects on the economy will be, but we've got a panel of judges here, including the unscrupulous Bill Gates, who's hidden behind, I believe, I forgot to include a logo that I was going to put on here of my least favorite hamburger restaurant, who is sponsoring these ghouls in my imagination. But we've got Dr. Fraudulent Fauci, Dr. Scarf, Miss Indictment 2020, Dr. Tedros, the diabolical. Now, here we have an ex-president who's even more impressed with the ample gluteus maximus of Angel Urena than his employer. But William Barr, who could actually do something about all of this, doesn't seem to be too bothered by the whole thing.
William, what me worry Barr.
Yeah, and actually, Charles, I've got an excellent surprise for viewers and actually sponsors tomorrow. I think a lot of people know that Monday mornings is Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard. Tomorrow we're going to have a guest who has personally met and interacted with William Barr.
Wow.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting for people to see. And people who are with us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth can watch that and maybe even pose questions to the guest with Discord and in the comments and all that.
Yeah, so we've been taking time away from doing our standard slide presentations just because it's been difficult, and I've had to do research for the set of books that I'm working on, and I appreciate being able to take the time to do some other stuff. But as we think about where we are today on April 26th, and we look at that poster, what I think we should come away with understanding is just how docile and obedient the whole world has become, because a bunch of people who are sold to us as being experts have told us, you gotta stop doing everything because there's, just stop everything. Yeah. There's no cost to that. Just stop everything because we got this model we were working on over here, and it's not the feminine, the beautiful feminine or male type. It's a mathematical model that spit out a bunch of stinking foul garbage, suggesting that in America alone, maybe more than 2.2 million people would die if we didn't immediately take everybody in the world and send them indoors, ignoring the idea that people actually have to make products and services and their global supply chains. And we now should go from being, in this country, a nation of individuals with minds and the capability to exercise free will. No, we're supposed to just wait inside. Don't go outside, just wait inside for the word about when a bunch of fat-headed governors, are going to decide whether or not you can actually get back to your life. I mean, since when did Andrew Cuomo, acquire the chops and the experience to tell every business in New York City and New York State that he knew best as to when we should go back and tell every owner of every company, these employees are essential, those aren't essential, when virtually probably 75% of the government workers, save for the line police officers, the line firefighters, the line hospital workers, that is to say the doctors and the nurses, 75% of the people getting government paychecks are probably non-essential, but they're still collecting their paychecks, whereas in the private sector, we're not. I mean, this is a monstrously bad set of decisions. And you ask yourself, who benefits from all this? Prior to March 16th, 2020, it sure seemed to me like Donald Trump had already kicked China's ass between the trade deal that seemed to be working and helping the United States more than China, and the fact that Hong Kong had riots in the streets. Now we've gone from that position to a position where we're all cowering at home, particularly the older people are worried about what's going to happen going forward. And nobody's asking the questions, for example, about Huawei and 5G and the degree to which China has been stealing our technology ever since 1988.
Not nobody. David Hawkins has been asking that question, and well, I'll leave that for another conversation, but it's a good thing that you brought that up.
Right. So we don't have our eye on that. We don't have our eye on the fact that the monopolist in chief, Bill Gates, who has pulled the biggest fast one in plain sight, I think, of any monopolist on earth, going from a position where Bill Clinton's government was investigating Microsoft for antitrust violations. He gets off, the negotiation spills into
off, Gates or Clinton?
Microsoft gets off.
They both got off.
They both got off, perhaps together. But the Microsoft American antitrust lawsuit winds down after George W. Bush comes in his first period in office, and the European antitrust suit doesn't really bite Microsoft that hard. And today Microsoft has, if not the largest market capitalization of any company in the world, very close to it, at well over $1 trillion. Gates, through his foundation, still owns a boatload of Microsoft stock. And through the operation of what I would argue is a crooked foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates fake charity foundation, in my view, because it's never been organized properly or operated lawfully.
Gates thing hasn't either?
No, we've been into it in the sense that you can't have a private foundation and give a non-existent set of Clinton charities more than 100 donations and say in each of your filings that the Clinton Foundation was a public charity when it wasn't a public charity. Ordinary mortals go to jail for doing that.
So this is interesting, Charles. We've heard, I'm just going back in my mind over the stuff that you've been talking about for the past 2.5 years on this, or 3 years even. So Jeffrey Epstein is in some book or something attributed to starting the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, they said it's not a book. What it is it's in the request for leniency written by lawyers. We talked about it on Wednesday. In the request for mercy that a lawyer will put out just before a client is sentenced. A whole bunch of people recited Jeffrey Epstein's supposed good works. And this lawyer's letter was not written by Epstein. It was drafted by lawyers who are members of the bar, it should be the non-alcoholic bar, and they go in and they make all sorts of false claims that Jeffrey Epstein was conceived, I think, in so many words, of the international mission of the Clinton Foundation and I bet he did.
He was conceiving other things.
And took Bill and a whole bunch of actors and masseuses to Africa starting in September 2002. And it doesn't say it that way. It says, Epstein conceived of the Clinton Global Initiative, which is a transparent fraud in my mind. And this lawyer's letter seeking leniency went in, and evidently it worked because Epstein was he had to do some time in the Palm Beach County Jail where he could have Girl Scout cookies delivered by Girl Scouts. Unsupervised, and he could walk, around and do what he wanted to do, and he really wasn't punished anywhere near as harshly as he should have been.
Yeah. Well, but the thing I'm getting at is, it seems like Bill Gates is behind all of these guys who are connected to the Clinton Foundation. What if Bill Gates had Jeffrey Epstein talk to Bill Clinton about creating this foundation? Because you see, what I noticed about Jeffrey Epstein is that he liked to hang out with Prince Andrew. Not because he thought he was a cool guy, but because if you couldn't entice somebody with cocaine or underage girls, maybe they want to come to an event where Prince Andrew is or where Bill Clinton is. Like, that's a different set of people that you can entice with that sort of thing. And I just wonder if Bill Gates hasn't been hiding behind all of these guys the whole time. And now that we're in the 9th inning, or the end of the game here for people who are watching from parts of the world where innings don't make sense.
Right.
Bill Gates has become a lot more visible, and I don't think as many people were aware of his tentacles being in all of these things as we've become in the past 3 months.
Well, so there's an excellent book called There's No Such Thing as a Free Gift by Lindsay McGooey, and it's all about the Gates Foundation. I commend that book to people's attention and reading. You can get it on Amazon. No Such Thing as a Free Gift by Lindsay, Linsey, McGooey, Mcgoey. And that book goes into the history of the Gates Foundation. Like other corporate marauders and monopolists, Gates found himself in a position when he became under scrutiny by the federal government for antitrust that he hadn't really done much in philanthropic land. So he set up this foundation. He then tasked a firm whose name has never come up before on this show, McKinsey and Rajat Gupta, to design a mission for his private foundation. And they came up with the idea of trying to help a number of things, but primarily to focus on helping global health infrastructure improve. That was the main theoretical goal of the Gates Foundation. In addition, they were promoting literacy and better education. But the tricks that are available when you're a multi-billionaire, the richest man in the world or the near richest man in the world, you get law firms to figure out how to get on your right side. And law firms will do whatever they can, normally lawfully, to craft a solution that will make a billionaire happy. And what you can do even today, or what you could do back when Bill did it at first, is you can take stock that the Microsoft stock that Bill had, he initially paid very little money for. It was founder stock, basically, probably less than a penny a share. And that stock became worth a tremendous amount of money when it was donated. So what you're able to do back in those days is you would take this appreciated stock, instead of having to pay capital gains tax on it, you would donate it to your charity, and you could take a deduction, in the case of a private foundation, equal to 30% of your adjusted gross income each year. You could carry it forward if you didn't have as much adjusted gross income as you needed. So you take this stock, and if Bill Gates had taken the stock and given it to the Ross Perot Foundation, over which he had no influence or control, that would be one thing. But he took it from his left hand and he put it into his right hand, and he doesn't pay capital gains tax. He still controls the stock through his foundation, and he gets a gigantic reduction in his income. That's not very charitable.
Does Ross Perot have a foundation? Because I would give money to that.
And another thing, I don't know.
Keep on slow dancing.
That's right. But so Gates. It's very important for companies like Microsoft that look at the rising Chinese market and say, I think we better make sure we try to sell Microsoft software into that market, to be on the right side of the Chinese government. And when you get to be somebody who's attempting to control a global market, including China, you may make accommodations you shouldn't make. For example, the way CNN, in its quote reporting, it's very much, I don't think it's taken seriously in the United States by most people, but internationally, because
CNN? No. I mean, not our viewers, but obviously it's like as much a legitimate brand as, Wonder Bread or something.
Again, when we went to Norway and you're in there in the airport and the only thing on television is CNN, that's why I went over to the book counter and I was trying to read the instruction book for a Korean-made little video recorders. I'd rather read that than watch CNN. But anyway, CNN needs to have its journalists and have its people who are employed within China continue to work there. So when the Chinese government says, we don't like the way you're reporting about X, Y, and Z, we know, because this happened in Iraq, that during the run-up to during the hostilities with Iraq, this head of CNN afterwards subsequently admitted that he accommodated Saddam Hussein and moderated their in quotes, analysis, which I would pronounce differently if this were not a G-rated show, to basically go soft on Saddam Hussein, with the argument being that they had employees in Iraq and they didn't want those employees to suffer. So, these people who are trying to conquer global markets will make accommodations to a China, to an India, to other large markets that don't necessarily serve the best interests of the United States. For example, if the Chinese military has since, call it 92 or 93 when Bill Clinton became president, stepped up their efforts to steal our technology so they could leapfrog their economy. If the Indians, starting in 1995, have been doing the same thing, that's something that the ordinary American today is coming to see actually happen and hurt us. And there's about to be, I think, a bipartisan or across the political spectrum retribution against these monopolists, the Bill Gates, the politicians, and the corrupt cronies who maneuver to protect these large monopolies like Bill Gates and the Rockefellers and Bloomberg and others.
The cronies behind the coronavirus.
Right. And here you have Bill Gates, saying, the solution to this debacle, which is, I think we're going to get into that in a minute, this total debacle, is to keep the world shut, not for another week or so, but for 18 more months, 2 years, so that to get back into circulation, you could be forced to be vaccinated with one of the vaccines that he has influence in or control. And you can also get a little digital chip inserted in you that can then give information back to one or more other companies that he may have an interest in. This is control. This is an idiotic control freak plan. Nobody on the planet is smart enough. No single person, even using big data and AI, is smart enough to dictate how the global economy should work on a nanosecond by nanosecond basis.
Emphasis on dick. Charles, another thing that David Hawkins has frequently told me about is this guy, John Shalikashvili. Are you familiar with him?
I know who he is, yeah.
So, as Mr. Hawkins says, Shalikashvili went to China at the direction of Bill Clinton and said something to the effect of, "My president has instructed me to give you all of our military secrets."
Yeah, that's called treason.
Well, this guy was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's the son of a Waffen SS officer. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Who was brought here under Operation Paperclip. Now, it's one thing to be descendant, of German descent. That's one thing. But your father is a Waffen SS officer and you become the Joint Chiefs, the head?
And who approved that? Who vetted that?
I don't know, but that's just it. It's like totally bizarre. And I've heard that the entire Chinese space program was enabled by ballistic missile technology and, obviously tracking things and launching things. It's all related. But the Clintons, they had that whole thing with Chinagate, Charlie Tree. All this gets forgotten.
Well, not by me. But, and it needs to be remembered by your growing audience. Back in 1789, when George Washington became president, it didn't really particularly matter what the United States of America did. We were a pimple on a camel's ass back then. But today, in terms of the global economy, our markets are gigantic, and our military remains quite powerful. So you can imagine what foreign interests would like to see they might be able to get out of a corrupt administration, starting with, I wouldn't just pick on Bill. I'd go back to H.W. Bush. You could argue you could go back to H.W. Bush as vice president. It's tough to pick on the peanut farmer because he's basically just a Nimrod. And Jerry Ford got hit in the head too many times playing football. But this whole project to create a new world order where we say, America's the most consequential country in economic terms. Why don't we just open up our borders, surrender to faceless bureaucrats at different multinational organizations, allow our workers to be crushed, encourage our factories and other things to be sent outside this country? How can that be deemed to be the sensible approach? Why would Google want to shut down critics of that approach? Oh, Google, let's see, they're a large monopolistic or near monopolistic company that would like to, I think they're banned on mainland China, but they'd like to have an ever greater share of the...
Google is banned in mainland China?
That's what I just was reading, yeah.
I thought they did something to accommodate all the
I think the Chinese citizens are banned from using it.
From using it, right. So people in the chat here, Charles, are reminding me about this Google patent. Usually the patent searches are more of a David Hawkins thing, but this is a patent that recently came about that Microsoft apparently is the applicant for. It's weird. Usually there's a PDF of the patent, but this is a cryptocurrency system using body activity data. Human body activity associated with a task provided to a user may be used in a mining process of a cryptocurrency system. Server may provide a task to a device of a user, which is communicatively coupled to the server. I guess people are presuming that this might be somehow linked to the functionality of a Bill Gates Mark of the Beast chip that could be installed.
I don't like this at all.
Well, the other thing that people point out is that the patent is 666.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
I don't know why it doesn't show the PDF that we could normally look at, but Charles, we've been we haven't been in the studio as much lately because we've been walking around. It's a little overcast. It was predicting a large amount of rain for the past several days, so we made the decision to stay here, but people who have been missing our previous episodes can go back in the playlist here. Last week we were exploring Mr. Epstein's neighborhood. Lots of really interesting interruptions to that and other unexpected technical failures have caused me to make some changes here in the studio that will be coming online over the next few days and should make the show even more robust and resistant to whether they be crashes or deliberate attacks. Hopefully we'll avoid that. But Charles, almost 40,000 views just of this list of videos.
Amazing.
And this is our 223rd episode together.
That's really nice. And how do we know how many views in total we've had of all these, or is that something that's difficult to?
Of just this, there is a way to find it, but YouTube has recently made some pretty substantial changes to its interface and other aspects of how it works. So rather than hunt around for that while we're live, we can maybe take a look at that after, and I'll prepare something for next week. So there's a little bit of a departure from our regular format today in that there's not a prepared slide presentation, but where would you like to go with our conversation?
Well, I think we should talk a little bit more about some of the features here, and then I don't know if you agree, Jason, if people have questions,
sure,
mayto try to answer.
Yeah, we got a lot of them here. Can you see this screen here? Is that
big? I can, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Good. So, but just to go into this a bit more, we've gone from a system of government with three co-equal branches, executive, legislative, and judicial, to a system where people with incredibly murky pasts, to put it politely, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and this diabolical Dr. Tedros are suddenly issuing edicts, and have become not simply a fourth branch of government, but they sit atop, these three people, they effectively sit atop our federal government and the state governments, because leaders are now terrified to do something which a Dr. Fauci or a Dr. Birx or a Dr. Redfield or Dr. Tedros might say is the wrong thing to do, forgetting, of course, that the very same people who have lionized, who put Dr. Tedros on a platter, don't want to criticize Dr. Tedros and the World Health Organization for giving us horrible information about not only about this virus, but about HIV and AIDS. I mean, this World Health Organization that Fauci and Birx are so quick to praise, and Tedros has come up in, starting back in 2003, is a clear record. We talk about this book, Dr. Catherine Eban's book, Bottle of Lies. We'll have to put it back up at another moment, but that book conclusively proves, with other evidence in the public domain, and other evidence that Larry Doyle, at LW Doyle USA on Twitter, has been putting out on a day or every other day basis, conclusively proves that the World Health Organization was sucker punched by Ranbaxy, to put it charitably, in 2003, when there was a rush to get cheaper generic versions of these HIV/AIDS medicines out, Ranbaxy, to satisfy the deaf, dumb, and blind checkers of drugs at the World Health Organization, evidently back then, submits drugs under its name that had not been manufactured by Ranbaxy, submits medical test data that was not vetted by a true third-party person, was wrong, submits trial information that is invented and doctored. And what does the World Health Organization do? Well, this is great. You gave us crap, garbage in, garbage out. We're going to prove this. We're going to approve your medicines for use outside the United States, around the world. The FDA had not approved it, but outside the United States, you could say that the World Health Organization has approved these 3 types of Ranbaxy drugs. And the person who was the head of the World Health Organization was, in the end of her term, the former Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Brundtland, was the head of the World Health Organization.
Wow.
And a woman named Sigrun Mogadal, Mogedal, still involved with the World Health Organization, still involved with Gavi, still involved with the Global Fund, alongside Dr. Birx, who's on the board of the Global Fund. These people they got suckered, to put it charitably. They did not raise any alarm over what Ranbaxy did. And this book, Bottle of Lies, recounts how starting early in 2004, the team of people who had been brought into Ranbaxy to professionalize it. Ranbaxy was then a second or third generation Indian-owned large company, large, big publicly traded company, and they had recruited talent. And this talent had come in and evidently was shocked at what they found. So one manager leaves in research and the testing department, basically overseeing that department in Ranbaxy. You see this all in Catherine Eban's book. And by August of 2004, this is just as the Clinton Foundation is, under Bill Clinton, is promoting the sale of Ranbaxy drugs around the world. The William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation signs an agreement, Bill signs an agreement with Ranbaxy in October of 2003 to promote the sale of these adulterated drugs around the world. That's our great Bill Clinton, more good than bad. More harm, less harm than whatever.
He boasts publicly about selling pharmaceuticals.
Right, he's too busy
You were talking
looking
about lionizing the WHO, Charles. I don't know about any more lionized than that. People are telling us that NASA is evil. MK has a question. Been watching for about a year and just wondering how I got to know and meet Charles. It's an interesting question, Charles. Would you like me to answer that, or would you like to answer that?
Sorry. You can answer it.
Well, as I recall, when I first started Crowdsource the Truth, I was working with George Webb, who recently made a fool of himself in a telephone interview with CNN, revealing he had no evidence whatsoever to support his claims of a patient zero at the military games in Wuhan. But George introduced me to a woman named Patricia Negron, who contacted you by phone and invited you on the show. We did an interview down by the World Trade Center, but I was just getting this whole system developed at that time, and it didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to, so we've never aired that interview. And then you came and met George and I on the roof for an interview, and I think that was like the day you learned that Peter Smith had died. One of those 2 days. You got a call like while we were preparing to start. Okay. Shane Harris was
Shane Harris called at the World Trade Center.
Right.
At the World Trade Center, yeah.
Shane Harris, who I believe has lied about the death of Peter Smith.
Oh, of course.
And when I challenged him on it, he refused to address it at all.
Yeah. So just if we could go back to the train of thought for a second, unless somebody else has a quick question.
Well, someone is saying that they think Mouthy Buddha's Pedogate 2020 was removed from YouTube, and that's correct. Porgy Tirebiter is asking us about that. Very curious that this Out of Shadows documentary, which really reveals nothing new, no information that wasn't already released in 2016, which nobody has gone to jail over, that thing remains.
Jason, did you catch Trump's cryptic tweet just a little bit ago. We should maybe find
Let's take
that.
a look at it.
Yeah.
The Pedogate film has been removed, but people can get it on BitChute. If they go to BitChute, they can find it. So let's go to Twitter and see what President Trump is tweeting about. This is an interesting change of format, Charles.
Yeah,
A little bit of an interactive show here. POTUS or Donald Trump?
Probably real Donald Trump. But John Sabatini can tell us if we see.
Okay, so which is the one that we're looking
Now this
for?
he's misspelled Nobel, but that's okay.
Noble. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe he did that on purpose. It's a non-noble. So let's see, 54 minutes ago, so it doesn't seem that recent. Cryptic. You see anything cryptic here, Charles? Lawsuits should be brought against all, including the fake news, to rectify this terrible injustice. Now, wait a minute. Is this what he's talking about?
I guess. I don't know.
When will all of the reporters who have received Nobel Prizes for their work on Russia, 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 has anyone received a Nobel Prize? Maybe he means a Pulitzer Prize.
Well, no, he means Nobel. He's just, I think, either misspelling it on purpose or
Turning their back to the cherished nobles. I think he's misspelling it on purpose. Yeah. That's the cryptic tweet. That's got to be the one that he's talking about.
To the real reporters and journalists, that might be you who got it right.
Yeah. I think that might be a slew of guests who appear on Crowdsource the Truth, Charles.
That's good.
Yeah.
Look how many retweets this gets so quickly. In 54 minutes, 9,000 retweets.
It's good to be the king.
It is. The king of all media.
I mean, people are asking us questions that are pretty loaded and we can't necessarily answer. I don't have any information on Alex Jones beyond what...
Let's wait till you see one that you think is great. But if I may I just want to complete the thinking on your wonderful poster.
Sure.
So if we can get that back up, yeah. So we were talking about the pasts of Fauci and Birx. The past Fauci apparently has a lot of reporting now that he has multiple business connections and interests. We've talked to people in the past that the CDC and indeed the World Health Organization are not these objective, pristine, nonpartisan operations. They are funded in part by charities. And the charities are funded in part by pharmaceutical companies who have much to gain and much to lose if the World Health Organization, CDC, and other entities like that make the right or wrong kinds of decisions. Dr. Birx is married to, and Fauci we know has written absurd, a virtually love letter, a love email praising Hillary Clinton in 2016 in the middle of the drama. As Comey was in theory investigating her for mishandling classified information. We've talked in past shows about how the high-level State Department person had sent a file around early January 2016 to Dopey James Comey saying, "Hey, Dopey, I've got evidence here, conclusive evidence that Hillary and others are mishandling classified information and worse. Here's a taste." I'm summarizing the letter, and I want to walk into a skiff and explain what I know. So let's get this done. Please give me a response. He doesn't get any response. So the Strzok and the Page team, they're too busy doing the Strzok and the Page thing to each other. And Fauci on this is 2013, saying, look at this.
But this is also, remember, Cheryl Mills was one of the crew that was cleaning out Vince Foster's office before federal investigators were allowed in there.
And Cheryl Mills was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, right, in the White House.
Trusted person.
Yeah. So this is just nuts. What is the date of this again? Is it January? January 23rd, 2013. So this is just as she's leaving, being Secretary of State, to rejoin the Clinton Foundation.
Can I point out something that will annoy you?
No.
Building 31, 3 times 1, a 31 Center Drive, 3 times 1. He's in Building 33.
301.
well, it's Maryland, they can't control it, but, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes it is a bit much, but the frequency with which 33 shows up, and certainly in the places that it shows up, I think these guys love encoding all kinds of messages all over the place.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you know, when we're talking about Thelema and some of these bizarre religions that get involved in some of this stuff, one of the things that Ole Damagard has pointed out is that they operate by this system of karma, where they have to tell us what's going to happen, which is part of the reason why all this stuff is encoded. And the thought process is, we told you, if you're too stupid to figure it out, that's on you, not us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and let's focus a little bit on Tedros.
Sure.
I promised one of our loyal viewers that I'd get into it a little bit. So Tedros, if you pull up his Wikipedia, you see that this is a person who is not a medical doctor. It comes from one of the poorest countries on earth, which today, despite all the many billions of dollars in aid that has gone towards Ethiopia, the country is still one of the poorest countries on earth, with over 100 million people, about 70% of which do not have access to electricity. This guy's living in Geneva, who knows, probably in a mansion. And he's supposedly a fantastic malaria researcher. But when you go back into what he did when he first took his position as Minister of Health, 2005. Let's Google, for the heck of it, as they say. Let's Google Tedros with Yale in 2005 and see what we come up with.
We're going to have to explore this symbol on his lapel as well. So Tedros
and Yale in 2005 and see what we come up with. And Clinton, actually. Tedros, Yale, Clinton, 2005.
2005. Is he going to be in the Skull and Bones coffin doing something weird?
Well, let's see. This is a later one, March 20th, 2006, but it recites the history of, now look at this, they call it the William J. Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative. There is no such thing. Never was, never will be. There was no such charity. Okay? And they get involved in this Ethiopian Hospital Management Initiative at the request of Dr. Tedros, as part of the efforts of the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, which doesn't exist. This is a breathless press release that talks about all this. Here's a quote from President Clinton. Here's a quote from the president of Yale. It recites the history. Here's this professor who then was just a professor of public health, but became the Brady Johnson Professor of Grand Strategy, as opposed to Pee Wee Herman, who was the Herman professor of, molesting people in miniature movie theaters. I mean, this is such a ridiculous title for somebody. But anyway, this is a press release that brags about what they're doing, claims that the Clinton Foundation was doing this since 2002. That it launched these rural programs in Ethiopia in April 2005. There's no evidence of this in the Clinton Foundation filings with the IRS, that Rod Rosenstein and Dopey James Comey and others had been investigating from January, and Robert Mueller is head of the FBI. If you just stop here for a second, at the very bottom. There's no evidence that any of this had been lawfully organized or operated in any country, let alone in Little Rock, the United States, any country in the world. No evidence of that. No audits for the Clinton Foundation. There's your man, Joe Cashin, who features in various fundraising exercises, all of which are happening from what location, Jason?
77 Water Street, I would guess.
Well, in I think the Harlem office at that point in Manhattan.
Yeah,
Clinton Foundation was neither the Clinton Foundation nor the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative or any piece of the Clinton Foundation. None of them were registered lawfully in New York State. Yet this guy is fundraising using a phone number in Manhattan with an entity that had not filed its fictitious names, that the doing business as names, which you have to do in New York in every county in which you operate. There are 5 counties in New York City alone and it hadn't done that. So this is just, we could go on, and we've done hours and hours actually on Ethiopia already, but for the new viewers, the foundation, the arc, as people like to talk about, the arc of history and the arc of this person's career, the arc of Tedros's career took off in 2005 when he was plucked from obscurity as a non-MD to be made the health minister.
The first.
The first. It's always a brilliant move,
Yeah.
You have a heart problem. Okay, I'm going to take the guy off the street that you run into from time to time who sells music, and I'm going to make him the heart doctor in Ethiopia, the head of the health system. Why not? Because then I'm going to take Bill Clinton, who has nothing to do with the foundation named, his proper name in 2005 was, I believe, still the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, because its amendment was not, we've been through this before, was not crafted. We're going to slap this guy in Ethiopia together with a fake charity run by a former president. We're going to involve my alma mater, Yale, at the very highest level, which is eager to get its international profile raised. We'll assume that the Yale people who lean left to begin with are not going to go and say, Bill Clinton would be, so crazy as to, rub Yale's good name in the mud. We're not going to check anything. We're just going to have the president of Yale jolly up with the former president and jolly up with his fake doctor. And we're going to lend Yale's considerable clout and global credibility and the stamp of approval on this project that then sends this arch globalist who's a Marxist-Leninist. We're going to send him from Addis Ababa, the capital city in Ethiopia. We'll put him on an arc where he can be on the board of the Global Fund in 2009 when it's, stealing tons of money that goes into this cesspool in Geneva. We'll let him do that. He becomes the foreign minister of Ethiopia. And then by 2017, when the Get Trumpy project goes on full swing, we'll make this Marxist-Leninist be the head of the World Health Organization, and we'll set things up for, we can't do the Green New Deal immediately, but we can do the fake coronavirus. And this guy will make pronouncement after pronouncement, and all the left-leaning eggheads will say, well, the World Health Organization said X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I mean, this thing just, if we have any security services left that are objective, Rick Grinnell, for example, the acting DNI, needs to sic a team on this Tedros. I have sent word multiple ways into the Trump administration saying, look, this guy could not pass, in so many words, could not pass a security test to clean the subway in New York City, let alone to be sitting on top and bringing the entire world to its knees. Isn't that what the Marxist-Leninists want to do?
Absolutely. That was the stated goal of the Weather Underground, which I remain convinced Barack Obama is a member of. Charles, a lot of people have sort of challenged us on this Dr. Tedros is not an MD thing. They say, oh, well, he's a PhD in public health or something like this.
So is Chelsea.
Well, but the question that I have is whether he's an MD or not. Let's say he was an MD. Why would you select an MD to be the head of the World Health Organization from a country like Ethiopia that is so much more primitive in terms of its health care? I mean, even the most skilled and experienced medical doctor in Ethiopia is not going to be up to speed on the techniques, the technologies, not going to have the kind of widespread experience that a doctor from the United States, from Canada, from Germany, from France, from the UK. Why? If we want somebody leading the world, it's not about choosing somebody because they're from an underprivileged country or because they're a minority or because of their sex. We want the best doctor possible to be the guy at the WHO.
I'm glad you brought that up. Why don't we go back to the Sunday with Charles?
But before we do, there's one important thing. What the hell is this?
It could be just... maybe it's a symbol of the World Health Organization?
Bishop Gators said it was the symbol of the Lifeboat Foundation. Let's take a look at that. I want to verify that.
And we should all chip in a bit and send him a razor.
It doesn't quite look the same to me as the Lifeboat Foundation logo. Perhaps there's a LGBTQ-friendly version of this logo that Dr. Tedros might be sporting there, but that looks like the Wheel of Fortune, and this Lifeboat Foundation logo looks different.
Why don't you see if you Google Tedros and lapel pin?
It's an excellent idea. I'll do that right now. So, okay, back to the American Idol.
Yeah, you mentioned, why would you take somebody with no credentials and allow them to completely destroy a health system globally? I think you can have your answer in Obamacare and Barack Obama. I mean, remember, the distinguished MIT professor, Dr. Gruber, who was like Birx and like Fauci, sent around the country in numerous broadcasts to back up what the Obamacare team was going to say.
Charles, our ingenious audience, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they've instructed me that this is the UN Agenda 2030 logo that is on Tedros's lapel pin. Something I've heard about a lot from viewers, but don't exactly know the details of. I think it's nothing good.
Yeah, it's not good.
Here are the goals of it. Sustainable development, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education. I mean, that's like the Oprah Winfrey. Everybody gets a car.
Right.
Everybody gets a supermodel. Everybody's 6'2". It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Sun. Everybody gets sun. Everybody gets to sleep. Everybody gets food. I mean, these are interesting, but at what cost? And again, the gap between, let's say, the no poverty objective in the United States, the gap between where we are now and no poverty, how far away are we from that? But the gap between that objective in Ethiopia, where they are today, and the global goal is immense. You can't get to the no poverty goal in Ethiopia until you have electricity for 70 million people that don't have electricity. What does that cost? How much energy does that consume?
I guess that's what I meant. I don't mean to disparage any of these goals, because individually they're, of course, Nobel. But I find that anything that usually is just saying, hey, we want no poverty. It's like, well, that sounds great. But then when you get to the inner workings of it, it's like, by the way, we're communists. And if you are, not a communist, we also want to kill you.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's part of the issue here. We need to know a bit more about some of these objectives. Yeah. But sorry, back to the American Idol.
Yeah. So we were talking about, why would you take an Ethiopian non-doctor and put that person in charge of the entire World Health Organization to try to sell the idea that the World Health Organization knows more than, let's say, the U.S. medical profession and the U.S., not necessarily the FDA, but the U.S. line doctors and nurses. I don't think the World Health Organization does. We gave you a case in point of the whole HIV and AIDS crusade, which has cost millions of lives, still has tens of millions, hundreds of millions potentially of people around the world exposed now to, because the criminal way in which these adulterated drugs were distributed, particularly in Africa, we may have created resistance to treatments for this HIV and as it evolves into AIDS problem that it seems to be stuck in and not really addressed, not really helped much in Africa. The very same person who, has proven, I would argue, that he's completely mishandled and should resign. I'd seldom sign White House petitions. I signed the one to remove this guy from the World Health Organization. Not a single penny of the United States taxpayer money should go to the World Health Organization. And foundations that give money to the World Health Organization should pay an excise tax on those contributions, in my view, because it's so criminal, so much corruption, so much money has disappeared. And it's not simply a money issue. It's also that so much this Tedros guy called Trump a racist for shutting down
China.
It's ridiculous. And of course, no one bothered to ask, hey, Tedros, how much money do you have in your Chinese bank account? Anyway, going back to Obamacare, Gruber himself, the man that was trotted out before all the talking heads, all the Sunday shows to explain if you want your doctor, you can keep your doctor. It's a fantastic, we'll bend the cost curve. Does that sound familiar? We're going to bend the healthcare cost curve. We're going to bend the spread of coronavirus.
Curve, yeah.
Right, we're going to, all this fancy stuff, and you say, oh, that sounds good, bending the curve, that's probably a good idea. If you want to go around a curve, you should probably bend with it. But I mean, then this idiot Gruber finally admits that, we had to lie to you.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, he ultimately said, look,
because the truth would have upset you?
Yeah,
that's what I've heard before.
I've heard that as well. I mean, this guy. I mean,
what a novel reason. I think that's why lying was invented.
Right, that's right. Dr. Liar, John Gruber, crying lion John Gruber, And then said, because American people are too stupid to understand this. He was quoted as saying this. This is the kind of expert. You look at this guy's resume, which I don't know how easy it would be for you to get it, but I've looked at it in the past. It is a laughable thing. You show me a 70-page resume or a 50-page resume, whatever it is. You might call it a CV, but it's this guy here we go. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be his resume. Yeah, here we go. CV, right there.
Is downloaded here.
Yeah, that's quick, man. You're zipping. Now,
Whoops.
Is this the 70-pager?
It's lengthy.
Yeah.
It didn't give me the PDF though. This is just a text document, so he doesn't seem to know what a PDF is. But that's fine.
He's a professor at MIT of
MIT.
economics.
He's got to be a genius. He's doesn't even know what a PDF. If you want your PDF, you can keep your PDF. This is a Word document. It doesn't matter.
But anyway, so the premise of Obamacare was flawed from its inception. The idea that what we're going to do is design some complicated insurance policy.
Look at where he went for his PhD, Charles.
Yeah, well, it's impressive.
No, it isn't.
I don't know. It's not that easy to get a PhD in Harvard.
I'm just saying there's a whole lot wrong with Harvard. It seems like a lot of people who are involved in all this stuff are going to and getting money from and giving money to Harvard. I don't know if people noticed how uneasy Dr. Paul Cottrell became when I started questioning him about Charles Lieber, but he seemed mighty nervous to me.
Well, yeah. So speaking simplistically, the rising nations, particularly in Asia and particularly in China, are really into brand names and really into education. And I remember, without disclosing the nationality so we keep safe here, a friend of mine from Harvard Business School did very well, and the daughter of his accountant wanted to go to Harvard Business School. And my friend said, would you talk to this guy? This guy would like to talk to you about it. I said, sure. The next day he flies all the way from Asia. He's in this metropolitan New York area. I'm invited over for dinner. I've never met the guy before. He walks up and he says, if you can get my daughter into Harvard, I'll give you $1 million. And I said,
tell him to call that woman from Little House or whatever.
That was before. It was before then. And I looked at him and I said, okay, step one in trying to get your daughter into Harvard, don't lead with that opening sentence to a perfect stranger.
Right. Charles, commenters are telling us that Kim Jong-Un is dead. I don't mean to stop you while you're insulting Harvard, which is becoming one of my favorite things to do. But I don't know if he's dead. They're just still saying that he's disappeared. Watchers are advising caution. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed that he's dead.
No, he's not. He's resting. From the Monty Python speech.
Yeah. He's resting. The parrot. He could be a resting parrot, Charles.
I think we're bouncing around a little bit, but
sorry,
it's okay. But
well, that's what happens when we look to the comments. It's like
right.
a million
that's right.
non sequitur. I've been filtering out the most nonsensical.
But staying on Harvard for a second, where Barack Obama went to law school and where Gruber got his PhD, and who knows, maybe Gruber and Obama knew each other because they were roughly contemporary at Harvard. Different parts of it.
It's pretty cliquey, isn't it?
The law school is...
They have the Harvard Club. Everybody who goes there is very proud of going there.
Except the Yaleys, like me. But Harvard has, or had, I should say, some very accomplished professors and very famous thinkers. The problem with Harvard, the knock on Harvard, is that it is such a big place that it's rare that a student at Harvard will get a lot of quality time with these famous professors. They're off doing their projects, their consulting, their venture capitaling, whatever they do. And yeah, they'll teach classes, but they're not really, hanging out with you and having drinks or, really interacting with you.
Right.
So going back to this Obamacare, as in the case of the World Health Organization, you can have your sustainable goal pin, you can have your conferences, you can spend absurd amounts of money on travel. But, the way I understand health, and I'm squeamish and people know that, health involves key things like doctors, nurses, hospitals, medicine, places to make sure that the medicine is actually cooled or whatever it needs to be and stored properly.
I must disagree, Charles. Health involves things like good food and clean water and a home. What you're talking about is like medical intervention.
Yeah, I was gonna,
sometimes the detriment to health.
Right. Yeah, I was going to get down into all that as well. So you also have to obviously have clean water, clean sanitation, clean air, and then if you've got a country like Ethiopia, which is gigantic, and you expect to have the people who are not living in cities but are scattered around the country interact when they need clean water and clean sanitation and perhaps medical treatment, it's helpful to have roads, to get them, and roads that are not filled with, cow-sized potholes. And Ethiopia is a country that has high elevation and low elevation and long distances, whatever. None of that is present in Ethiopia today. For all the billions and tens of billions that has been sent towards it, none of that shit's there.
That's a point that you've made that, for me at least, is extremely well taken, that it doesn't make sense, even if you believe that the Clintons are sending HIV drugs to these countries in Africa, doesn't make sense that that's what they're doing to try to improve the health when so many more people are affected by dirty water, lack of roads, lack of food. Now, Charles, we are getting some credible information about the death of Kim Jong-Un, so I just wanted to share that with you. This report coming from...
There he is.
Korean TV. But joking aside, someone is telling us that North Korean TV is reporting that Kim Jong-un died on April 24th, so 2 days ago.
No, I'm sorry to hear that. So who is...
resting?
Well, who's going to replace him?
They said his sister, but I mean, again, I don't know that I trust North Korean TV. It still remains kind of an up-in-the-air report. We need to see what happens.
Wasn't the sister the one who was responsible for killing somebody in Malaysia?
Smearing the face of the other guy?
In Malaysia?
You don't want to chill at the airport in North Korea.
Yeah.
Well, it was the cousin or something who got his face smeared with that stuff and then died pretty quickly.
I mean, how old is this person? Kim Jo-jong?
She looks like 15 or something.
Yeah, I know.
Put her in charge. What could possibly go wrong? Well, what do you think the impact of Kim Jong-un's death would be? It seems maybe like a setback because at least Trump had some relationship going with him that seemed at times to be moving in the right direction.
Well, there are also reports that the coronavirus is raging in North Korea, even though they said at one point they didn't have a single case of it.
Do you think Kim Jong-un died of coronavirus? He's fat.
I don't know. There was some speculation that a Chinese doctor team had been sent in to deal with him, and that he may have caught it from the Chinese doctor. But it's sad. I mean, this guy was young. I don't even think he was 50 yet, was he?
No, he was in his 30s. I think people were saying he celebrated his 33rd birthday twice. Now, it's brought up right here by Jay Fields that I did speak with Jack Cashel on Thursday or Friday, and Jack was talking about how Obama got into Harvard. I was listening to somebody else's podcast this morning about how like Al Gore has 4 kids who got into Harvard, and it's like, you can't do that.
So what happened is that the story on Obama is that it is alleged that a wealthy business person connected to Saudi Arabia made a donation. It might have been Waleed.
Waleed.
Yeah.
But that's what Jack was talking about.
Yeah. Going back to 91, I think, was when Obama was graduated. I may have that wrong, but I think it was 91. Harvard Law School had gotten itself all in trouble with for having an undiverse faculty. It was basically white males.
Right.
And
now it's all blackmail.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where Jeffrey Epstein comes in.
That's right. Yeah, we'll bring in blackmail.
Too many white males. Let's get the blackmail going.
Right. So Obama, I would love to see, and I'm sure there is an application file for Obama. Obama fit the bill perfectly of somebody, from an exotic background, raised in both Indonesia and Hawaii. Pakistan, exactly. So you can imagine people falling all over themselves to say, this is a great...
Is that al-Walid right there?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
How can you be sure?
It looks, well, because I've met al-Walid.
And that doesn't look like him to you?
Barack Obama, by all accounts, is tall.
He's sitting.
I know he's sitting, but these other guys,
This looks like they're sitting on a bed and he's sitting on the floor. So this is Snopes asking, does this photograph show Barack Obama with Prince al-Walid bin Talal?
I don't think so.
And they say no, which causes me to believe that it probably does.
But if you put up a picture, al-Walid is not, he prides himself on not being tan, first of all. And I doubt it. I've spent hours with al-Walid, unfortunately. And he's small and pale.
Pulled from thin air. Photograph doesn't appear to have
There is a resemblance. If you pull up a picture of al-Walid is not, he's not a smiler.
Let me find him. He hangs out with Bill Gates a lot.
Oh, he does. He does. He also hangs upside down a lot, or at least recently now that MBS has been on a tear in Saudi Arabia.
Here he is smiling. I think that kind of looks a hell of a lot like him, Charles.
Well, let's go. No. Go back to the pictures of al-Walid for a second. Do you see a single one where he's tan?
Well, what I would caution you against is comparing the complexion of someone in two different photographs, because depending on the exposure, how it's printed, how old it is, there's a lot of ways that I could make you look very dark in a photograph without even my most...
Yeah, I don't think so is my view, but, other people can guess.
I'll do some superimposition of that image over some photos of al-Walid and we'll try to...
Well, let's also think about what year would that have been taken?
Don't know.
Picture. Well, is it...
70s, I guess. He looks about 20. No, it would be the 80s, because he would be 20. He was born in 1961.
Right, so let's say it's 81, 82. Mm-hmm. How old was al-Walid in 81, 82?
How old is he now?
I think he's in his 60s. Yeah, he's older than I am.
So he was born only 6 years before Barack Obama. If he's 19 here and he's 25 here, that would match.
Yeah, again, Jason,
No, we don't know, but it's fun to...
People can check, and the people who are expert at that can check. al-Walid in 81, let's go into his history, actually, because I think he was a student in, what happened, if we go into his history in the bottom, early life and education, here. Let's see. He lived in Lebanon, then he went to Riyadh. By 79, he was in Menlo College. In 85, he was in Syracuse.
Puts him in the United States.
Yeah.
Where's Menlo College?
That's near, it's in the Silicon Valley.
Makes sense that he'd be rolling around the U.S. looking for somebody who's willing to infiltrate the government at the highest levels and destroy the country.
Yeah, and here, I met him in 94, I think, 93 or 94, 93. And my former brother-in-law started working for him. He was his chief investment advisor in Saudi Arabia, and a couple of years younger than al-Walid, and started working for him in, I want to say, 90 or 91. So that's when I met him. Yeah, even before 1990, I think.
So what do you think?
I still don't think it's him, but but al-Walid definitely had connections to somebody who connected to Harvard, and it is alleged that a sizable contribution was made to Harvard, and that maybe that helped Barack Obama not only get in but perhaps get the position of president of the Harvard Law Review, which everybody is, when you hear that, you say, he's president of the Harvard Law Review. That's fantastic. No, it isn't. It's editor of the Harvard Law Review. That's impressive. The editor is somebody who typically has written articles in the Harvard, which are very difficult to get published, and is actually edited as a junior editor those articles. That's a position that goes to really accomplished academic people. The president of the Harvard Law Review is the business manager. That's
right.
like the publisher of a magazine. It's not
or the guy whose Saudi uncle paid for
right,
him to
exactly.
get in there. But doesn't all the stuff that you're telling us, I mean, it's certainly supportive of the concept that Obama might have been hanging out with, associating with somebody who looks a hell of a lot like al-Walid.
It's anything's possible, Jason. But and a lot. What happens at these great schools, and including NYU, you get a lot of distinguished visitors. No, you do. I mean, at Harvard Business School, you get. Even today, it's closed now, but when it's open, you just get a slew of the top CEOs of every major company go through there. You get blasé about it. Oh, CEO of Microsoft's here. I don't want to see him. I'm going to play tennis.
You get blasé forward about it.
You get blasé forward about it, exactly. And the same is true at Harvard College and certainly at Yale College. My residential college, Timothy Dwight, an insurance fortune left some money so that current and former world leaders could come and interact with the students, live with the students for 2 or 3 days. And so I met Jimmy Carter when he was governor.
You've told me you didn't want to have breakfast with him.
Right, and I met.
What did Jimmy Carter have for breakfast?
I forget.
Not sausage McMuffin.
Yeah, muesli. I don't know. I forget.
You got to be regular, Charles. Now, we've got Mike Moorbuck telling us that Brzezinski had a lot to do with Obama's career.
That's possible.
That's interesting, because he's the guy who wrote that book Between Two Ages about America's role in the coming technocratic whatever, which it seems that Bill Gates is like the emperor of.
Well, yeah, here's another person. You mentioned Shavashvili, or however you pronounce his name. Here's somebody who came to us, the son of a stormtrooper, whatever you call him, and where did Brzezinski come from? Was it
Poland, I think.
Yeah, and
probably a communist, right?
And I believe he was Jimmy Carter's top
national security advisor.
Yeah, and how well a job did Jimmy Carter do?
I mean, I was just a little kid. I don't really know that much about Jimmy Carter and haven't particularly studied his presidency. But yeah, John Shalikashvili was the son of a Waffen SS officer.
Right.
Zbigniew Brzezinski, I don't really know that much about him other than that he wrote that book, hung out with, what's his name, Kissinger a lot, and is the father of that woman who's on the show with Stupid Joe, Scarborough.
Where's my intern, Joe?
Exactly. Hide the Intern, his favorite game. And then, Zbigniew Brzezinski, he wrote that book Between Two Ages, which describes, he's a globalist. These guys are the fathers of globalism.
Well, when I think of Jimmy Carter, and he had his hand in the Shah and the internal security agencies inside Iran went way over the line. But the way in which the United States pulled back from the Shah and allowed the present regime to take control in Iran is all on Brzezinski. It's all on Carter. And when I think of Carter and Brzezinski, and Carter in particular, I think of the Killer Rabbit episode. Do you know about that?
Killer Rabbit? You mean in Monty Python again?
No, I mean in real life. If you punch into Google Jimmy Carter and rabbit,
yeah,
you should get to an interesting story.
It's not going to be something that I don't want to see.
No. Well, I hope we'll pick the right story.
Bring up some ads for some weird stuff, Charles.
No.
Jimmy Carter Rabbit incident.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Jimmy Carter Rabbit incident, sensationalized as a killer rabbit attack by the press, involved a swamp rabbit.
That's how fitting.
That's the Attorney General right now.
How fitting.
The swan that swam towards then President Jimmy Carter and his fishing boat. So what happened with this incident? The killer rabbit?
It jumped at him.
What?
Killer rabbit.
And then he whacked it with a stick?
I guess. I mean...
White House photo of Carter and the rabbit. I'm not familiar with a swamp rabbit, but they seem aggressive.
Or how about Jimmy Carter's Playboy interview?
That's definitely going to involve a rabbit.
No, it does.
A swamp rabbit looks like a regular rabbit.
Right, but you don't want to be attacked by a wild animal.
It's certainly not in a swamp.
But even rabbits don't like Jimmy Carter. Silly rabbit. But
you know, when I was shooting in the what do they call the swamps in Louisiana? The
bayous.
The bayou. They told me that the most dangerous thing in the swamp is spiders.
Well, yeah.
Because you can't see them. Alligators and rabbits, they come at you. A spider, you get bit, you could be poisoned, and that's what they say is the most dangerous thing. So I guess Carter was a puppet rabbit, Ron in Oklahoma tells us. And Wascally Wabbit started SES. Yeah, that's true. Jimmy Carter started the Senior Executive Service. You know, I'll tell you, Charles, my impression of Jimmy Carter's presidency is that it was manipulated by outside forces like Kissinger and Brzezinski and even Bush. And maybe those guys, you know, once Jimmy Carter was in there, like, look at what's happening with Trump. I was having a conversation with somebody very intelligent today who doesn't seem to accept that Anthony Fauci is a scumbag and a liar and a guy who's been accused of scientific fraud and who's in a regular practice of, you know, falsifying medical results to drive people towards a conclusion and things like that. This person was asking me questions like, well, why would Donald Trump, you know, not get some other doctor to... And it's even the question presumes that Donald Trump is in charge. And what I'm saying is these forces can surround a president, in the case of JFK, eliminate him completely. But once they've done that, they can't keep doing that without revealing themselves. So they need to sort of change their tactics. And this fits these social engineers that I'm always talking about. They're constantly changing their tactics. If they can't get, you know, porno messages in there, they put other stupid messages in there, and I'm constantly doing things to block them. So you can't necessarily take these things directly head on. I think Jimmy Carter's presidency was manipulated. I think Ronald Reagan's presidency was manipulated. I think H.W. Bush was the manipulator, so he was in there kind of in control. I think Bill Clinton was his kind of, you know, prodigy or whatever. So he comes in there and it seems like this big rivalry between them, but they're just executing essentially the same plan. And when you get Trump in there, who's not part of the plan, the Bush, Clinton, Obama, as you've pointed out, was read into the plan once it was clear that he was too popular for Hillary to defeat. You get him on board. You compromise him somehow, or he's compromised. They start talking about that birth certificate, and it's like, hey, which way do you want this to go? I think something similar happened to Trump. They said, look, we're doing this pandemic, and either you're going to remain the president or you're going to die of coronavirus. What do you want to do?
Well, maybe. I think that, let's talk about the pandemic data for a little bit.
Sure.
You were among the very first, you know, because of your instincts and perhaps your background, you were instantly drawn to the fact that, you know, they're making a big deal about a virus. And I remember you initially said to me that inside every human, there are many, many different types of virus. And if we were to go in for a check of, you know, how many viruses do you have, you might be pretty alarmed by it. So I was struck when this started. I was prepared to believe, particularly as somebody getting close to the age where you need to be worried about this kind of stuff, I was prepared to believe if so many different people are talking, authoritative people are shutting down countries and doing this and that.
Gotta be true.
Maybe, maybe there's an element of truth to it, and let's be patient with it. You know, I did a draft story on Tedros, which I could have put out March 16th. And I thought to myself, I better not do this, because if I'm wrong,
you're going to look bad. It throws off everything you've done.
Right, so I held it back. But I have in my files, obviously, on my computer, what I had written. And so out of an abundance of caution, if the President of the United States gets a whole bunch of different people coming to them through his staff saying, look, this is different. This is not like normal flu. This could kill 2.2 million people. It could come on us very suddenly. We're not sized for pandemics. We don't have the ventilators. We don't have the health infrastructure. You know, you don't want to go down as the president who ignored our warnings. I get that.
Right.
But When the reports started coming in, and you and I walked around the city, how many times? 4 weeks in a row or something like that? You did
at least.
it with others, by yourself, and maybe with others. But when we didn't see in supposedly the epicenter of the pandemic, New York and Manhattan, Queens, yeah, right? We did. You went to Queens, but I said,
that was extreme.
I said, I don't know where that is. but when we didn't see the type of data that should be coming back, which is, all right, at the top on the deaths, how many of the deaths were people exclusively due to COVID, exclusively, and we didn't get that. We didn't get any grouping of the comorbidities, the other factors which could accelerate your death or lead to death if you get COVID. We didn't get any of that. We didn't get it broken down by age and gender. And most importantly, we got these figures. The most recent figures I saw this morning were 16,000 dead in New York State, right? So we didn't get...
Not including the state legislature.
They've been long dead. Long dead. But no, 16,000, and I'm not making light of 16,000 deaths. It's a tragedy. But how many people, the key question we asked many times together and separately, how many people had gotten COVID-19 and had it pass through their system with benign impact? There was nothing really negative. How many people got that? Nobody would tell us until late last week or middle last week, when we get an estimate, maybe Thursday, Friday, that in New York State, and I forget if New York State is more than 20 million or just about 20 million people, but let's use 20 to make the math simple. 14%, 13.9% of the people in New York State got the virus.
I'm laughing at this headline because anything that doesn't fit their agenda, it's like, well, that can't be true.
That's right. That's a conspiracy. Yeah.
Sorry, so the people in New York State who got the virus?
It was an estimated, again, to make the math simple, 14% of everybody in New York State got the virus, is one estimate, maybe the estimate's wrong, got the virus and had no malign impact. They got it, maybe they had a rough couple of days with sneezing or whatever, and a little bit of a fever, but they got through it. They thought it was the common cold. 14% of 20 million people is 2.8 million people.
Right.
16,000 deaths divided by 2.4 million.
Low.
Yeah, I mean, you don't shut a state down in the middle of intense rivalry with China, in the middle of potential resurgence of ISIS, in the middle of all sorts of problems, in the middle of, most importantly, the many poor students, up and down the line who've had their lives at the end of a school year. This is typically the most important, the beginning of the school year, it doesn't really matter, right?
People are studying for tests, all the work they've done all year. It's disrupted so many people's lives.
But in your senior year, if you're in a program where you've got to do a thesis or you're a PhD person, I mean, that's when, I know in my own case, I did most of my senior year work in the last 4 weeks of my senior year. But you've now thrown this gigantic monkey wrench into the process of giving people credentials that they've earned in university and boarding school and high school or whatever. But beyond that, if you're up in college and graduate school, you've got these crushing student loans, and the way you hope to pay them off is by having a job, or as they say, down in Washington, D.C., a yob. And I'm just kidding. But you're trying to get a job, and the higher employers don't know what to do. Some of these employers, particularly the small and medium-sized businesses, they may be shutting down. They don't know what they're going to do with their existing employees. The last thing they want to do is hire new ones. This decision, just this decision alone, by Fauci, by Birx, by Redfield, and the other people who've been pushing the president to do this, they must, now that their model has been proven multiple times to be a disaster, we have to go back and do a deep dive into the process by which this model was, who put this model together? Why did they select this team? Probably because Gruber wasn't available, or maybe Gruber was involved with it. Yet another stupid ass model. Who pushed this model? Who didn't stress test this model? Were there people working on the model who said, now wait a minute, this model is wrong, or where are the milestones in this process? They asked us to wait and shelter in place give it 2 weeks. When these results were coming in, did anybody on the modeling team go to Dr. Scarf and Dr. Falsey and say, look, these results are not squaring with your model? And
Charles, how do you feel about Governor Andrew Cuomo modeling nipple rings? People want to know if this would affect your decision to vote for him. I mean, that is weird, right?
The whole Cuomo thing, I don't get. We need to do a show on Andrew Cuomo's charity and his sister's charity. His sister has a crooked charity.
Oh.
Andrew was working in it. We need to do a show on, it's involving supposedly providing care for homeless people.
What?
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
It's true.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So we need to do a show on that, and we need to do a show on Andrew Cuomo's record as a housing secretary under Clinton.
Wow.
It's not, that's not it. There's Cuomo is an Italian. If you do Cuomo Sister Foundation, you might get it that way.
Now, what did you think about the
Margaret Cuomo? Here you go.
what's his name emerging from the basement and yelling at a bicyclist in the Hamptons?
Idiot.
He's really terrible.
If you do philanthropy, I don't know if this is the right one.
Well, perhaps we can
But there's a homeless charity.
find that for a future show.
We'll do it in a future show, exactly.
Yeah.
So are there other questions?
Well, there's tons of questions coming in fast and furiously. People are saying there's a lot of fakers in the comments. I mean, again, that's tons of social engineers. The best way for regular viewers of the show to counteract the social engineering, Charles, I say this all the time, if people see someone who's an obvious social engineer putting in a stupid comment like Jason is somehow related to Alex Jones, not true. I met him once at an event in D.C.
You're both, as Trump likes to say, you're both humans.
Exactly. So I guess from that standpoint, we might be related. But I mean, all these baseless, stupid things that get said and put these things out there into the internet. I mean, this is a technique, not of a journalist, but a provocateur. Someone saying that this, whatever, DJ and this woman in the military are patient zero. There's no evidence of that.
Right.
And the tactic is to just put it out, let people start harassing this person to force this person to engage on something. That's a social engineering tactic. Right. And when people see these social engineers in the comments, the best thing to do is become a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And I say that because what it does is it increases the resiliency, the strength, the economic strength of Crowdsource the Truth, which is what those guys are trying to stop. So when people become sponsors in response to that activity, it makes what they're doing counterproductive, and ultimately it will stop it.
That's good. That's good. So we're on the train of thought of saying, why, what should the consequences be? We can't have a system where, when you screw up, in a monumental screw up, you get promoted, right? Let's make Dr. Fauci and let's make him emperor of the world. So Birx and Fauci, Birx alone for her tenure as on the board of the Global Fund. I mean, there needs to be a massive investigation, not by USAID as it was rumored might happen, but by.
But that's the CIA, USAID.
It can't be them. The USAID is involved in this fraud. It's got to be stormtroopers is the wrong. It's got to be the guy from Walking Tall, the movie, with the big bat, that kind of person. Somebody who's been hurt in the past, who's got the tools to go in and look at every single grant, how did this come to light? How did this whole coronavirus exercise come to light? Who pushed it? Did anyone object to this?
Bill Gates.
Right. I'm just saying in the Trump administration, who was saying this was a good idea in the daily press conferences? Who?
Mike Moore wants your Tedros story to run it in True Pundit.
Okay. Right. Feel free.
Great. We'll arrange that after the show. Sorry to interrupt you,
That's
Charles.
okay.
But there's so many messages coming in, including MK, who's asking if we could do a show exclusively taking questions from the viewers in an Ask Me Anything format, something we debated for today.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to do it, I think, but I've done Ask Me Anythings before, and they're fun for me. I did it on actually Facebook, just sitting in a Starbucks not doing it by typing.
We could do it for the next 30 minutes. People are free to ask anything.
Sure.
As long as it's not stupid, we'll entertain it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, of course. If it's easy for you, Jason, I'm fine with doing it. But we can't have a system where politicians get to assert, like AOC, that there's a massive problem with islands flipping over and climate change and this and that, and we should spend 93 trillion on that. 93 trillion on it. You can't say stuff like that. You got to remember, there's a portion of this country, evidently a large portion of the United States of America and the world, when they hear Representative AOC says that we need to spend $93 trillion, they immediately start worrying about, well, where are we going to come up with $93 trillion? You know, and people get anxious. They get, maybe if they're prone to depression, they get depressed. People can even commit suicide when you start asserting these. You scare the living crap out of people. There should be consequences for that. I mean, I had thought that the Hippocratic Oath, and I may have this wrong, the first element of it is first do no harm.
Right.
You know, and here we have this wingnut, who the only person to vote against the latest rescue package was Wingnut, the bartender.
Really?
Who thinks
not enough money for her in it?
Yeah, it's too small. So she voted against
Whoa.
it. It'd lay a marker down.
Didn't she also say that we should continue paying people but not go back to work?
Exactly, brilliant. Exactly.
There's
free
a lot of
Coca-Cola
margaritas to be made.
Yeah, free Coca-Cola at every water fountain. I mean, it's just this is beyond stupid.
Yeah.
You should have to. People talk about, you should have tests for this and sanity tests to buy a gun. Before you go to work in a position of trust as a judge, as a senior politician, an executive branch or the equivalent at state and local level, and certainly in the House and the Senate, you should be forced to pass an economic literacy test, which is not with questions where the Marxist approach is the correct answer. You should really be forced to do this. This person doesn't know how to make change out of a $20 bill. She should not be asking for $93 trillion.
Right. Yeah. So we've got a lot of questions coming here, Charles. How about letting Dr. Judy Mikovits be in charge of investigating Fauci? I don't know that that's up to you, Charles.
It's not as I don't
and
want
I don't
that.
know that she's an investigator. She's a biochemist.
Yeah, her story is interesting, and it resonates with the work that you do and the work that I've done on the wider Clinton Foundation. Is that it seems like whenever there's a whistleblower, when anybody questions authority, the approach now is you then target the whistleblower. So she questioned Fauci's work, and the net is she ended up spending time in prison, some might argue, on not trumped up charges, but chumped up charges. And I honestly, I'm not a medical person, I'm not a scientist, so I cannot with precision evaluate her claims as contrasted to Dr. Fauci's claims. But I can tell you that through my work over now 5 years thinking about how we went after HIV and AIDS with Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Sachs and Paul Farmer and dopey Chelsea Clinton and others, I can tell you that's a disaster. And that's a total disaster. The best, a really sobering article, I've brought it up before, is by Celia Farber in Harper's. It's tough to find this article because it can be tough to find it, but it's a great article which points out the disaster shape of the search to fight HIV and AIDS in I want to say in like 2005 or 6 or thereabouts. And so the people who are taking victory laps, trust me, Birx, trust me, Fauci, trust me, Redfield. 2006. This is a fantastic article. It really is. Out of Control, AIDS and the Corruption of Medical Science. The Big Pharma went relentlessly after Celia Farber, who is the daughter of Barry Farber, the founder of Conservative Talk Radio. And I actually had the pleasure of having a meal with Celia Farber and talking to her at length and reading her work. This article, before you jump in and you say, I'm going to accept everything that Fauci and Birx and the supposed HIV experts have to say, read this article.
It's only available as a PDF to subscribers. So.
I've been able to find it other ways.
Okay.
But people who have time on their hands can maybe find it, or maybe it's worth paying up for, frankly.
There's a lot of articles about the response. Here is AIDStruth.org, maybe reprinted it. Let's see.
Yeah, people are, Celia makes some very telling points, and then Big Pharma attacks her relentlessly. And so the point of this is, I actually am in favor, and I think Trump is in favor, of rigorous debate on any important issue. You can't go and say, well, I want to have a bunch of people who will just say, oh yeah, Mr. Trump, whatever you say, that's right. You want, here's the issue. I want people who think that, A is the correct conclusion, and I want people who think the diametrically opposed Z is the correct conclusion, and I want you to fight it out. I want you to tear the argument into its elements, and let's understand what the truth may be.
That article's not loading, Charles.
It's tough to find it.
John Sabatini is watching us on Periscope, and he asks if you've ever been asked by the Trump administration to be on the Trump team.
No. I think I've made it pretty clear to people that I'm very happy that I retired in 2002, in July of 2002, and I really like deciding what I want to do and waking up in the morning and saying, today I want to study this or I want to do that. And I'm not really interested in going into, I would freely help, consult with, meet with, but I don't want to get in a position where I'm reporting to anybody because it's really nice not doing that, deciding, you wake up in the morning, as I say, and you do what you want to do. But I have been getting the messages through of my concern, not simply about the Clinton Foundation, but the charity world, and now about Tedros and the World Health Organization and other things. I have been working to do that, and I do that continually, not just to help people in the Trump administration, but other governments around the world that have contributed money to the Clinton Foundation. I have friends in these countries, and I'm able to get messages through these friends to governments around the world. So the short answer to your short question is no.
Very good. And we've got a lot of people asking me why I'm not commenting on things about Israel. I'm just not very knowledgeable about it. There's a wide range of topics that I don't speak about because I know nothing about them. And it's interesting that people want to compel me to talk about that. I guess for the simple reason that I am of Jewish heritage. It's a little bit, is that racist? What is it? It's sort of narrow-minded, stupid thing for ignorant people to ask me about.
Right.
Like, why am I not talking about the plight of gorillas? Perhaps I'm hiding something for the people who are doing things with gorillas. I don't know.
Right.
It's a very interesting line of reasoning.
Right.
Well, Charles, we've got a lot more questions here.
I'm happy to take a few more.
Let's see what else people are saying. Bill Barr. People are wondering, there was an interesting question about Bill Barr, about who's going to prosecute him.
We were talking about that actually offline before the show started. In the work that I've been doing, the funny thing is that, and I hope I will take this to heart myself when I do finish my own book, but the danger of writing a book and getting it published under your name is that people like me eventually are going to come along and say, wait a minute, in Hillary's book, Living History, is a hysterical book because, she says certain things and then you can easily check them and you can easily catch her in her lies. And there's so many people in the book, in the Clinton administration, indeed the Bush administration beforehand, even Reagan, have gotten into the business of writing tell-all books about what was actually going on in a given administration, and there are lots and lots of these. And I'm not going to give away where I got this different information. But in 1992, what's really interesting, you think about Trump and the interference that the Obamas, the Clintons, and others were doing to propel Hillary forward by keeping from us the degree to which she was a disaster as Secretary of State and afterwards, restricting inquiry, putting heat on what passes for the lamestream media to not cover these issues like Benghazi and really get to the bottom of those things. The hard fact is, and here's going to surprise you, that in 1992, according to one book, the situation in Arkansas had been bubbling along. To go back into a little bit of history, everyone talks about Whitewater, but Whitewater was not the biggest land deal that the Clintons were involved in. That was called Castle Grande, and that was a 1,000-acre property only 10 minutes or so away from downtown Little Rock. That was the dream of this guy, Jim McDougall, and Jim McDougall ran this failed S&L called Madison Guaranty. Madison Guaranty was under, this is in the 80s when this happened, he was under, excuse me, he was under the S&L was under in the penalty box. The regulators had said, you screwed up already, don't do anything risky. But he wanted to buy this large plot of land. He didn't have the money to do it. And he could only put a certain amount of his assets, call it $600,000 of the bank, to fund this purchase of raw land. I mean, the riskiest thing you could do in real estate development is to buy raw land anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. You should do that with equity. You should not do that with a loan. And you certainly shouldn't go, the reason being, it's a very risky project to begin with.
If you can't pay it back, you want to make sure you've got something you're going to develop there to pay back the loan.
Right, you just want to use your savings basically to do it. It's the way I've done different land things. But
still risky, but
it's very risky, but it can, if you like to walk around on land and you're cooped up in an office on the weekday, why not buy 100 acres of land if you can afford it and you walk around and have some fun. But anyway, they bought 1,000 acres in the 80s, and Jim, being this guy who's since died, admits in a book, and David Kendall disagrees with him, but he admits that he had been paying Bill off. He'd been having people walk cash envelopes into the Clintons, once a month to fund their lifestyle, because Bill was not very highly paid as governor in Arkansas, and Hillary was in the business of cheating on her billing records to inflate her pay at the Rose Law Firm. So there's quite a story.
I mean, saying she's doing more hours than she actually was?
Yeah,
she is such a piece of crap.
Well, but that was standard operating procedure. So we talk about this, is it a shock that they might have inflated the invoices at the cost of the Clinton Library in Little Rock, of all places? I mean, so back in what was going on with this Castle Grande, they take this crooked S&L, which was failing, they have it...
Savings and loan.
Which
the Bushes were super experts at orchestrating savings and loan disasters, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. And there's another story on that. We'll save that for now. But so the Castle Grande project needed $1.75 million.
This is the Castle Grande, right?
No, that's the Clinton Foundation. But
I thought you...
Oh, that's an actual place, Castle Grande.
Castle Grande.
I thought you were making fun
No, that's the trailer puny project. It's actually quite... Look at that roof garden and that penthouse. I mean,
I thought it was a mini golf course.
But that's the penthouse there. That's where Bill lives.
I don't think we could plop a Google man down there, but let's see. It'll say, oh, look at that. We can go on a virtual tour.
Ideas matter. Interesting.
Dumb ideas matter, Charles.
But just staying on Castle Grande for a second, it's okay. In Castle Grande, the rub is that they needed an extra $1 million and change. And so what Jim McDougall did, who was running Madison Guaranty, said, okay, what I'll do is I'll take somebody and I'll make them a personal loan. I'm not allowed to put more than $600,000 or so a change in this risky land deal. We won't call it a risky land deal. We'll make a personal, non-recourse loan to somebody who will take that money and put it in the Castle Grande deal. Bright line bank fraud. Who was that person? Webster Hubbell's father-in-law, Seth Ward. Who was the lawyer who papered over these transactions? Hillary Rotten Clinton. Okay, that's one thing that they've been trying desperately to hide. All eyes have been on the Whitewater thing. Real focus should be on the Castle Grande thing. So I don't know how we got to this area of talking about real estate redevelopment projects, but...
Well, enter username here is asking if this guy was Arkansided.
Jim McDougall, he was sick. I don't think he was...
Well, that's
some
an
say he might
explanation
have
for
been.
being friends with the Clintons, but...
Yeah, what happened was Jim McDougall was a Bill fan and did not like Hillary. A lot of the Arkansas crowd really didn't appreciate Hillary coming in from the Midwest, with her haughty attitude. So many of these people liked Bill and did not like Hillary.
A heart attack. Ooh, that's interesting. At the Federal Correction Facility in Fort Worth at
It's
57.
a little young, yeah. A little
That's
young.
pretty young, and the heart attack gun was a well-practiced and known thing. I don't know. I think Arkansas is a fair talking point on that. Heart attack in jail.
Here's the Casa Grande deal, you see. 1985. Okay. Now, we've gotten into this. Remember, we've talked about, even in Arkansas, shouldn't the Arkansas bar have rules about, what a lawyer can and cannot do? In Arkansas, a lawyer is an officer of the court. And so the Code of Professional Conduct in each state or in Washington, D.C., does apply. And the Code of Professional Conduct, which we put up here before, says that a lawyer is not supposed to be part of a crooked scheme. I mean, this is just you cannot, provide legal paperwork to make this project look correct, right? I mean, the bank was only allowed, to put in, what does it say here, 600,000? Yeah, 600,000 in Madison Guarantee that's the most they could put in. Seth Ward didn't put in the money. Madison Guarantee lent Seth Ward the 1.15 million. So you were hiding the fact that we're almost 3 times the value of what you said was going into this Casa Grande project. 3 times was going in, way outside the bank's parameters. And the bank subsequently failed, I think.
But they put it right here on Wikipedia like it's no problem.
Well, no, it's in many other books. This is, I think, drawn from different books that I found, including a book that one person who wrote a lot about this and then had a magical conversion is David Brock. He's one of the first people to write about this. He's in the news again for being. He's finally going to be, I think, disciplined for his profiteering off his
Media Matters?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he seems to be under investigation at this point.
Yeah.
Finally.
Who's doing the investigation, though? The FBI. It's an interesting point that you raise, though, Charles, because, we've got 2 examples there of David Brock and Chris Ruddy, 2 guys that are speaking out against the Clintons, and then somehow they switch.
Right.
Was it revealed that they were wrong, that the Clintons weren't involved in the strange death of Vince Foster or any of the stuff that David Brock was writing about? Or is it possible that someone went to them and said, hey, you got 2 choices. Either you can keep doing what you're doing and you might have an accident, or here's $1.5 million and shut the F up.
Yeah, and both of them happen to be gay, Chris Ruddy and David Brock. So it could also be the element of, these pictures that we have here are not going to,
But if they're openly gay, who cares? People are saying that James Alefantis is David Brock's ex-boyfriend. Darlene Whitney is making an accusation against David Brock that I won't repeat. Could be true, I don't know. And we've got someone named Fayez who insists that I must speak about Israel. He's following the programs for quite a long time, and I've never done a show about Israel. Well, Charles, I've also never done a show about making soufflés.
Maybe
because
you
it's
should
not
do that.
something that I know anything about. Yeah. So I don't do shows about things that I don't know stuff about. And this guy, Fayez, is an obvious agitator who should go do his own show about Israel. He seems to have a lot of opinions about it. Yeah. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I've never been there.
I've never been there. I don't know anything more about Israel than I do. I know more about Mexico than I do Israel because I've been to Mexico several times.
And you like enchiladas.
But this feeds into a long-standing smear campaign that was started by a bunch of social engineers and is being possibly inadvertently advanced by this idiot, because the claim is that I am somehow affiliated with Mossad. There's never been any evidence produced to support that false claim. I am not affiliated with Mossad. I have never knowingly communicated with anyone from Mossad. People point to George Webb as being a member of Mossad. I have no evidence that he is. It's a claim that he's made. That's a guy who has made an innumerable number of false claims, including that patient 0 for coronavirus came from these military games in China. Now, the other day, I did a show with John Cullen, who had some surprise information he was going to want to give me. And I think you know this. I frequently tell guests, don't tell me
because I don't want to know. I want my response to be natural on air. And when John brought up this topic that was, as far as I know, being pushed by George Webb, I immediately shut it down, not because I dislike George Webb. I do dislike George Webb, but that has no impact on my believing or disbelieving any particular topic that he speaks about. I wanted John to stop talking about those military games because I thought it was incorrect what he was saying, and I think it's a distraction. I think there's much more evidence that is suggestive that Bill Gates and the various foundations that he's connected to, including the Clinton Foundation, including the Centers for Disease Control, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I think he is a much more likely suspect to be questioned than anybody at those military games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I started on this matter in this way is that I realized that the world of private foundations and public charities is a world where you can't keep secrets. You actually, if you want to continue to be a foundation in good standing, you better file your reports and they better be truthful. And if they're not truthful, even though you have the protection, let's say, of the Barack Obama administration, doesn't mean that the Trump administration can't go back retroactively and say, you know what, RICO suave. We've got a RICO conspiracy here. It goes way back. It involves the Bush family. It involves the Clinton family, of course. It likely involves the Obamas. It involves multiple wealthy people. And Bill Gates, unless he wants to pay he truly doesn't care about money. He should just give all the assets of the foundation to pay back this latest stimulus, or a portion of it. We don't need a wealth tax on middle-class people. We need to look at these improperly run, illegally operated and organized foundations as honey traps for the government. We go in, Gates Foundation, thanks for running a fraud for a long time. We're just going to take all your assets, and now, well, you do that first, and now we're going to prosecute you.
Yeah, I like that idea, Charles. Here's an excellent question. RMWSR is asking about the possibility of a short period of deflation as businesses restart.
Deflation and inflation are I would almost say outmoded concepts, in that there is, when we think about our operating costs, you're already hearing stories about how meat processing plants are shutting, chicken herds are being culled, and people still need to eat meat and still are going to eat chicken. We're not going to go beyond meat, and eat that crap.
Somebody said about AOC before, beyond meat, she's beyond a meathead.
That's very good. I like that. Yeah, we could do all in the dumb family with her. But anyway, so I think, it depends which cost elements you're talking about. I think oil and gas prices are falling for the moment, but the instant people get back on the road, they're going to skyrocket, and food prices could rise, educational costs could go down. I think we're going to have, who knows where the actual inflation number is going to come out, and I would caution people that the inflation number is an estimate, and you can use the urban one, you can use the rural one, it's very regional, and beyond that, the mix of things that you buy changes as you age. In the prime demographic, the one that's most economically active,
It's all toilet paper.
25 to 54 is the prime demographic of people who are assembling households, buying homes, fixing them up, maybe getting a second home, and spending a lot of money. They spend very differently than people at 55 and up, who tend to be downsizing. And so, on balance, I think we're going to see a drop in wealth, for sure.
Already happening.
We've seen a large drop in wealth, and that's before you factor in the impact of this massive loans that governments are taking out around the world, and how that gets all sorted out. In the short run, we may see price rises. I'm noticing in the supermarket, granted I live in a place where there's only one decent supermarket near me, so they can gouge like hell, but prices are, to give you a simple thing, not that I look at every price, but I happened to notice one day that one cucumber cost 99 cents like 3 months ago.
And now?
$1.49.
That's quite an increase.
So not every price is going up, but
Yeah,
that would
well,
be my answer.
I'll give you an example. You know, this blue glove that I use to shake your hands, I use those for cleaning, like the bathroom and stuff, because I don't like
You use that glove to clean the
Not
bathroom?
that one. I buy the disposable ones because those big yellow ones, I find they smell like a foot after you use it once. So I just get the disposable ones. But I buy them pretty infrequently because you get a box of like 100 or whatever. And I mean, I think they used to be like $3 or $6. Now it's like $17 for a box of those gloves.
Yeah, no gouging there.
I mean, I guess it's supply and demand. Maybe a lot more. I see people walking around wearing them all the time now. So,
and the other thing, you know, just we speak about food. You know, a big percentage of what you can spend money on if you have a family is food, and you can actually save money going out because sometimes the large restaurant chains are able to purchase the elements of what they claim is in the food for far less than what you would have to pay for. And
Right.
we've disrupted that whole, you know, the restaurant purchases are basically, forget them. Restaurants aren't buying food. And that has destroyed, I think, the profitability of the food distribution business. And so coming back out of that is going to be very, very interesting. And it's not like you could say, all right, this little piggy over here that's about to be slaughtered, you know, we'll just sell it next year.
right.
I mean,
Well, so see, this is what I wanted to ask you. So you're talking about something that I feel like there's got to be a term for this in economics, but I don't know what it is. Like, it's obvious to me that shutting off the economy for 2 months while everybody is sort of like on this side of the disaster right now, waiting to see what will happen. What do you call all of the unknown things that are going to happen now down the road? Like, what does that affect? You do it over here, and the problems won't start showing up until, like all this stuff. Like, the restaurants aren't buying. It's not something that I thought about in my day-to-day life, but perhaps somehow restaurants not buying food are causing my supermarket food, because I thought I'd be saving money buying a ton of stuff, packing it in the freezer.
Right. The unintended consequence, I guess. But you know, the analogy that I would use is that you go into the doctor, and because you think you've got a problem with your right hand, and you're right-handed, and the doctor looks at you and says, "Well, you know, there are too many right-handed people. We need to cut off your arm."
Oh,
And you say, "Well, you're a doctor."
Yeah, it's a
and
good
then you go to the
solution.
hospital, right? And AOC greets you it takes you into the thing, and they cut off your right and your left arm. You know, that's basically what we've been doing here, shutting the entire economy down in New York, shutting, you know, the very big piece of the U.S. economy is in New York State, shutting the global economy down and suffering. We don't, of the 16,000 deaths, we don't know what percentage are exclusively. One study is that only 5% of those deaths is exclusively due to COVID. We've shut the economy down. How many suicides have occurred? How many, you know, hypertension problems have been exacerbated? How many lives are ruined because families borrowed too much money to send their precocious kids to schools? Now they're not going to get degrees, you know, and on and on and on. And how much damage has been done by these health experts who their own model was proven wrong, and they certainly, with the model, had not thought through the other unintended consequences. Now, here's a shocker for you. I fault Trump here, in part, because, you know, it'd be one thing, you know, something this extreme. You know, you go in, and somebody says, "Well, Jason, you know, the solution to crowdsource the truth is let's just take you off YouTube, take you off Facebook, take you off Twitter, and donate all your equipment to, you know, the Salvation Army. And why don't you go to Bangladesh and spend 10 years eating dirt, and, you know, when you come back, maybe you'll be able to do it better." I mean, you wouldn't do that, right? And similarly, you know, the people around the president should have, and the president himself should say, "Now wait a minute, what's the closest we ever came to shutting the economy down?" When 9/11 hit New York City, we were shut for, I think, 8 days.
maybe,
Right?
yeah.
And that was pretty adverse consequences, particularly to downtown New York.
Well, but also that almost seemed like a natural reaction. Like everybody was in shock. Everyone was in psychological shock for a certain period. So that was almost like a natural, like nobody was complaining, why are we shut down? Right. It was like, are we going to be nuked now? Or nobody knew what to do.
Right. And so you think about these different tests that we've had. We've had Greta Thunberg, go to the UN or wherever she was and, lecture everybody. And next thing you know, she's, coming from, she was going to go sail, remember? She's going to sail from Sweden down to Chile, and then Chile fell apart. We tried this angry bird.
Chili eating contest.
Right? She's...
Beyond Meat chili contest.
Right. Yeah. She tries her pronouncements. AOC tries her pronouncements. I actually love Mini AOC, the fake Twitter account. Yeah. It's very, very good. And so there has been, you talk about social engineers, there's been an experiment going on. You get somebody with really no credentials, and you get them earnestly to make a plea, buy this magazine or I'll shoot this dog, National Lampoon episode. And you wait and see what happens. And what people who don't have America's best interests at heart have been able to see now for 6 weeks is that we could be suckered. I mean, this may not be the only time that something like this happens. And I really think in any time where you make a massive set of mistakes, as I think has happened here, and again, I like the path that Donald Trump has been on to try to restructure America's place in the world, to decouple us and other large nations from unregulated globalism. I like all that. But you can't just praise when you see a mistake. I mean, I hope he is in his bunker or wherever he likes to spend Sunday, and he has opened up a serious can of whoop-ass on the people who did this, and we're going to have a frank admission of how this came to pass, and we're going to get this country out of being idle and back into being engaged. And I would like to see Fauci gone, Birx gone, Redfield gone. I would like to see the Gates Foundation investigated going back to day one for its ties to Rajat. Bill Gates hired Rajat Gupta to design his strategy. Rajat Gupta went to prison.
Yeah, these guys are all tightly connected, and people are wanting to look at the results of the military games and say that that's evidence that something happened there.
Right. So, and Bill Gates, you must get to a place, I mean, when you don't really pay that much in income taxes because you have a structure where you're just basically transferring your appreciated property into a foundation that you continue to control, and you don't pay a state income tax in Washington State, and now you're out marketing. I warned Bill Gates on progressive radio, I actually warned him indirectly and directly, that the idea of creating Gates Philanthropy Partners, where on the strength of Warren Buffett's investment in Gates Foundation and Bill's, you're going out soliciting money, across state lines from gullible people. Don't give your money away individually. Just put your money in Gates Philanthropy Partners, and you can piggyback on the good works that we do. I warned that was a very dangerous thing. Of course, he didn't listen. These are the type of moves that we need to do. We have now, in this last, 6-8 week period, we have piled how much new debt on this economy? I mean, Donald Trump was the one who was...
2.2 trillion at least.
More, I think it's 4 to 6 trillion. And Trump was the one who was elected in part over concerns that we were putting too much debt on the economy.
It's not good, Charles.
Yeah.
He needs to do something dramatic, or his presidential legacy is going to be really damaged by this.
Right.
I'm still supportive of the president, and I think he's being manipulated in a way that's not that easy for him to get out from under. And I still want him to win in 2020, but the handling of coronavirus has not been what I would have liked to see. Let's talk for a minute, Charles, there's been some talk about like a top 10 list of people that Joe Biden is considering for presidential running mates. Didn't have Michelle Obama on there, but...
Pajama Boy is probably one of them.
Well, no, it was all women, and they were all terrible choices.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the case of Joe Biden, one interesting thing has happened. That accuser, who frankly I watched her, I not only watched
the
podcast, but I read her piece.
I thought it was compelling testimony.
I thought it was absolutely compelling. And then of late we find the the mother apparently may have called in to Larry King.
Larry King. All the lead. Were you surprised Giuliani didn't take the money?
Yeah, they has a big problem with flatulence, and I was in.
Larry King does?
Yeah, I witnessed it myself. I was in that. What's that hotel on Park Avenue the Tisch family owns? It's a fancy place people go for breakfast.
The Farter Meridian?
No, not that. I know the guy who owns that one too, but no, it's. Anyway, it's on like 60th, 61st Street at Park. And I was having lunch with my former girlfriend at the time, and all of a sudden I hear like this loud blast. And I'm looking around, I'm like,
you're like, oh
what
no,
the hell
9/11.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a little pop or anything. It was like a big, blast. And my girlfriend worked for the Tisch family. So that's Larry, he lives here. I mean, he's got a big problem with flatulence, apparently he does. Anyway, so she called in, and I think the party that went after Brett Kavanaugh in the vicious way they went after Brett Kavanaugh for so long, and I mean Brett Kavanaugh has 2 daughters, he has a wife. The vicious way in which the Avenattis of this world went after Kavanaugh on what turned out to be a completely false story.
I was just looking for some stories about Larry King.
He was there, I guess. Right?
Gas explosion in Florida.
So the vicious way they went after Kavanaugh stands in stark contrast to the passes that Anderson Cooper and others are giving Joe Biden. There hasn't been a serious question asked of Joe Biden by people who, I'm not advocating asking Biden questions the way the folks went after Kavanaugh, but you can't let Biden get away with his stock answer, which is always, "Come on, man, listen, fat. I want to go outside and beat you up. Don't ask me those stupid questions. Those have been debunked." I mean, you can't, on this one, you can't get away with that. And if I were advising the Democratic Party, which I will never do, I would say, if you want to get smoked in November of 2020, if that's what you really want, by all means, put Herbert the pervert in there as, and as the president. You can put Pee Wee Herman in as the vice president.
But don't inhale.
Yeah.
That's
you will get smoked.
That's the way they smoke.
And so I think that the Democrat Party has serious problems now with Joe Biden. I don't think the Bernie bros and sisters are going to stand for giving Biden a total pass here. And you can be certain that the Trump campaign is going to run. This is going to be, the ads are going to be hysterical against if Biden ends up being the hypocrisy. It's not going to work. And what I think in contrast is going to happen here, I think the game they're playing already, that Mark Elias, who was the person who negotiated the deal between the Clinton campaign and the Sanders campaign, DNC, that basically gave the nomination surreptitiously to Hillary Clinton by rigging the rules of the game, that same dude is now going after the state of Nevada on behalf of I'm not sure who, to force them to permit ballot harvesting, which is the process by which you can send ballots around, and you can have somebody go to the senior center and bring a whole bunch of people who don't know who they are in to vote, all voting for that kind of stuff. So you're on a program here which I think is really malicious. We're sitting here April 26th. May will come and go quickly. You'll be into the summer. The convention for the Democrats has been pushed into August. September 4th is the beginning of the supposed 60-day rule. And what they are trying to do, I think, is to have Joe Biden be the one to take all the incoming, and then right before, or maybe as we get to the convention itself, it'll be Biden out and somebody else in, and then all kinds of distractions through the actual, until you get to September 4th, and then they'll try to steal the election. That's the game plan I think they're on. I remember now, I'd gone on a long jag about Casa Grande. Why I was bringing that up, you had asked me about Barr.
Right.
Barr had,
yes.
Barr and people were all in for the idea of going after, dropping a bomb on Bill Clinton in the September 1992 timeframe over Casa Grande and I believe Casa Grande and Whitewater, things like that. Barr also was in the camp of people who wanted Judge William Sessions out of the FBI. And at the same time, as the election of 92 neared, in November 3rd, 1992, George H.W. Bush could not believe that a draft dodger, which is what he thought Bill Clinton was, might be commander-in-chief.
And I think that's all charade, Charles.
Well, just let me finish. And so what he did is, it's a fact that he went to the leader of England and he asked the English, apparently his campaign asked the English to investigate what Bill was up to when he was at Oxford. And he subsequently, the leader of England, when Bill was elected, had to apologize, or did apologize, to Bill Clinton for possibly meddling in the 1990, or thinking about meddling in the 1992 election. So when we think about 2016 and 15 and Spygate, the process of the incumbent party meddling in the election, using the tremendous resources that a sitting president has to meddle in an election, this is not a new idea.
No.
This is an old idea. And it needs, however, it was taken to a level that is diabolically bad under the Obama administration. And I hope, instead of talking and doing, although I loved Beat the Press, the Trump conferences, those were fantastic. Instead of doing that,
Beat the press.
let's get the big bat out.
Browbeat the press.
Let's get the big bats out and drop some hammers alongside him on the perpetrators of the Russian conspiracy and the attempt the coup attempt against the Trump administration. Let's do that, and let's do that soon.
Now, Charles, this photograph is clearly taken before 1992. And here's Bill Clinton hanging out with George Bush at what looks like a barbecue. This picture is suggestive that they know each other quite well.
Could be. Yeah.
And I think that George H.W. Bush knew everything he needed to know about Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton, as the governor of Arkansas, was a major, you might even say, a key, like what's the word I'm looking for? A linchpin kind of guy in the Mena, Arkansas operation to bring cocaine back into the United States in this circular trade of Iran-Contra. So I have long felt that anything happening between George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton that suggests that they're rivals or enemies, or that the Attorney General of H.W. Bush was doing anything negative to Bill Clinton, it's all for show. And that the type of stuff that people hear on the news and hear coming out of these people's mouths are generally misdirection, and you really need to use your discernment to figure out what's really going on. And again, I come back to this thing with the military games in China. Somebody who wanted to conduct this type of asymmetric biological warfare against the people of the United States, the economy of the United States, and the president of the United States, they would have an interest in causing us all to believe that China did something to the U.S., while simultaneously causing China to believe the U.S. did something to China, because then all this fighting is happening while they're over here trading Microsoft stock and Amazon stock and investing in companies that are going to make a vaccine that perhaps they already have for a virus that perhaps they developed. This is what I think is going on.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out soon, and I would caution people that this virus pandemic exercise is a first step. We are very vulnerable at this moment. We don't know what's going on in North Korea. North Korea may or may not have, and China may or may not have electromagnetic pulse weapons.
Oh, they do.
And so we need to be on our guard here, behind our president. We have only one president at a time. We don't need Joe Biden's shadow government, into the shadow government. We don't need that. And, vice president, who should he pick? Wanda Sykes? I mean, she'd be good.
She'd be funny at least.
She'd be hilarious.
Yeah,
she'd be able to do a press conference.
It's more like the Simlac government with
Exactly.
Joe Biden.
Like,
right.
what does that stuff? Ensure or something. Like, it's
yeah,
going to become
depends.
national food.
Herbert the Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, well, Tara Reid is the name of this person who is...
The accuser.
Yeah, accusing Joe Biden, and that's a strange name for her to have, because that's the same name as somebody who's a famous kind of dope. Well, Charles, we've been speaking for 2 hours, and we could go on and on answering questions for a long time. A lot of people saying they don't trust Jared Kushner. I share that concern. I don't trust him either. His family history, his close relationship with Bibi Netanyahu,
A lot of weird stuff going on with Jared Kushner.
Well, if somebody asks the question, would I consider going in the Trump administration? For Jared Kushner and Ivanka alone, I would not do it because, being in a family business when you're not a member of the family,
Bad position to be
you're
in.
just going to get beaten up. I mean, when a family member disagrees with another family member and you side with one or the other, you're going to be crushed by both of them. And so I think it was, much as I think that Jared Kushner is probably a pretty smart person and maybe Ivanka's a pretty smart person, it's not like they need money. It's not like they need prestige. You could still move to Washington, D.C., and Trump could have said, listen, I'm going to put you in the kitchen cabinet. You're going to come here anyway. And you're not going to have a formal position. You're not going to have a security clearance. You're going to help, and you don't need a security clearance. You're going to help us with primarily economic issues for which security clearances are not. That's the way I would have handled it.
Right.
I also would have put all of the Trump family's assets, including Melania's, into a trust for their own protection. It was just a no-brainer move, because you're only going to get relentless accusations if you do it any other way. And by the way, when you put it into a trust, there's actually all kinds of tax benefits of doing it that way.
How would they not know that? That seems like the number one type of thing that Donald Trump and his advisors would be on top of.
I don't, I remember who some of his advisors were, Michael Cohen, people like that. I mean,
True.
He doesn't have the record. Sometimes volatile personalities who've done really well, they don't want to listen to anybody. They think, I'm the president of the United States. I decided to go into politics. I just ran for president and won. What are you going to teach me?
Exactly.
And that's, anyway.
You're hitting on something interesting, Charles, because, speaking about it in terms of stuff that I understand, in the late 90s, like 1999 or something, George Lucas revived Star Wars and made this second series of movies. And the first of that second series was the very first major motion picture to be shot digitally. But the technology wasn't at the place that it is right now. The sensors on the cameras were way smaller than 35 millimeter film. So different types of lenses needed to be used, and real dyed-in-the-wool cinematographers cringed at that. And I remember in an interview with one of the most famous visual effects supervisors there is, it was either John Dykstra or Dennis Murin, they said, how could you allow George Lucas to shoot the Star Wars films on a 3/4 inch chip? And the answer was, if I didn't, somebody else would have.
Right.
So sometimes managing these incredibly
Right.
successful genius personalities takes an approach that's not necessarily the conventional thinking.
Right.
There's things that happen that you can't quite understand looking at it from the outside, sort of similar to people watching our show and suggesting that I'm imposing on your time by going walking somewhere.
No, not at all.
But that's what I'm saying. These people don't know what the inner workings of our process is, so making a judgment is sometimes counterintuitive.
Right, and I would also say in the drama that Trump has gone into since January 20th, 2017, in my experience, not as extensive as Donald Trump, but I have some experience deal making. Before when you get into the final stages of trying to cut a deal, your advisors, the principals are going to have arguments and counter arguments and this and that. And very often, the correct way to get the deal done is to say, you know what? We're never going to get through this point by point by point by point. We're going to the basket approach. The basket approach is, if you want $14 billion in your bank account tomorrow, here's my final offer. Boom. Of the 26 points that are outstanding, forget 14 of them. I'll give you, 6, and I'll take 6 or whatever. And you get your $14 billion tomorrow morning, and the paperwork can be drawn, and everything will be fine. Whatever they're doing, studying the Spygate, the coup, the resistance, the Flynn thing, the shit's got to stop. Wray's got to go. It's crystal clear that Christopher Wray is a bad actor to me. If he were not a bad actor, we wouldn't be having so much obstruction of the effort of trying to... Wray has got to be gone. The first person to fire an FBI director was who, Jason?
Bill Clinton,
Bill Clinton.
first president ever.
Right. So why not get to the
No
big
good
leagues?
reason either.
Let's get to the big leagues. All right. Let's have Donald Trump be the first person to fire 2. And
Yeah, that would be good. That would be suitable.
And he does know how to do the phrase, "You're fired." I think he has some experience with that. We know enough to know that Ray's got to go. And I know people close to the president. I've talked to a few of them, and I've said, listen, what the hell is going on? Get the hell rid of Christopher Wray. If you get him out of there, the other swamp rats have been obstructing. You have a big purge. Get to Durham. Hopefully he's built his case, and whoever else is working on this. Let's play indictment bingo soon. Indictments, it must be, all this time that's passed, all the evidence that's out there, all these shows we've done, all the work Larry Doyle has done, all the work that others have done. There has to be a way to go right into the heart and throat of the Clintons, the Bushes, the Gates, the other people who've been operating these crooked foundations and allowing so much money to sloosh through these foundations into the hands of these corrupt politicians. There has to be, if you could put Corinne Brown in prison over $1 million, there's got to be something to do here.
Now, Charles, Mike Moore raised an excellent point. I think it was Mike Moore who raised this point. Christopher Wray had a very lucrative job in a law firm, and in 2017, his net worth was estimated to be somewhere between 20 and 40 million. The question becomes, why would someone with this type of important job and this much money become the FBI director, which can't possibly be paid more than 200 grand a year?
Because they saw what happened. The previous FBI directors have been able to monetize their service. I mean, you get to a point, he's pretty...
What you're getting at is there's a way to earn a hell of a lot more money by being the FBI director than actually upholding the law.
Right. So, but it's really time for... We've had enough of these press conferences. Trump himself has decided to cancel them for now. Let's get back to the business of investigating the investigators, and let's get some indictments, and let's get some justice, and let's put the scales of justice back into balance in this country. Because if Trump does not do that, the next set of brigands that gets in control of this government is going to turn this country into, far worse than Venezuela. We must reestablish the rule of law. And with that, I think, unless there's other questions.
No, I think that's it. There's a lot of questions, but there's a lot of trolls as well. It's a difficult thing to manage, the Ask Me Anything format, but I do like giving people an opportunity to ask you questions, Charles. But we get into how these troll accounts can shape the conversation by introducing an idea, and they try to insult me, and they try to insult my family, and they're doing all kinds of things. But I think it's been an interesting episode. We'll hopefully, it does look pretty lousy outside, so it was a good decision, I think, to stay here. I want to remind people who are watching the show, when they see these kind of troll comments in there, you can counteract them by becoming a sponsor. There is one more topic we can discuss for a moment. On subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Charles, people are talking about General Flynn. There was actually a big development in his case where the FBI is now admitting that, what was it that came out exactly? They lied about...
Well, so you're supposed to give what is called Brady material.
Right, the exculpatory material.
And you've met Sidney Powell, I've met Sidney Powell. I talked to her a number of weeks ago, giving her an update on what we're trying to do with the Clinton Foundation and the wider world. And she is not a fan of Christopher Wray. She thinks he should go. She, based on her work, License to Lie, that fantastic book that she had to self-publish, but I think it's a very good book. Sidney Powell is somebody who is tough as hell and very principled and loves the law. And she has been doing, I think, fantastic work for General Flynn and has managed to, I think, put the pressure points that can be applied on the other side, and they did. You're right. They had to admit that there was very highly material information that had been withheld from Flynn's previous counsel and withheld from her. And so on Friday, she moved to immediately dismiss the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's what should be done, and the guy should be remunerated by the Department of Justice.
Well, I talked to somebody over the weekend in the swamp, and they said, this guy, if he has a good lawyer, and I told the person, he has a very good lawyer, he's going to own Covington and Burling.
That'd be great.
That would be good.
That's the thing to do, is sue them.
Right.
Yeah, because that's Eric Holder and all those scumbags.
And they have insurance, but
You could drain that pretty quickly.
yeah, exactly.
There's a cap to that.
They better have, a lot of insurance.
I mean, they've destroyed his reputation. They've taken years of his life.
And he got into trouble in the Obama administration because he disagreed with, the hacks that Obama brought in on crucial national security matters. So, the Obama administration hacks have had it in for Flynn for a long time. I wouldn't be at all surprised that if it weren't Obama himself or maybe Valerie Jarrett who said, look, if we're going to attack anybody close to Trump, let's go after Flynn. He doesn't have that much money. He pissed me off. Let's get this asshole.
Right. Well, he's the one who said that he believed that ISIS was created deliberately, so they obviously had it in for him from the beginning there. There's a lot of people making some pretty insulting comments here, Charles. Do you know that YouTube eliminated the block function?
Really?
Yeah, and they also eliminated a feature that allowed me to go directly to a person's channel and figure out if they had posted any videos or if they had just made playlists. These were among the things that I was doing to determine if someone was a social engineer. If someone had a fake name, but a lot of uploads of someone talking who had the same face throughout the videos, and they're doing bike rides and their picnics and whatever, seemed like this is a real person, but just with an asshole opinion.
Yeah.
If we had a fake name, no videos, no followers, that increases the likelihood that it's a social engineer sock puppet account. Why would YouTube eliminate those type of features? It's strange how they choose to modify the system. I mean, it's certainly not evidence that they're involved with any of this social engineering, but people have suggested that YouTube is manipulating views. I mean, my observations lead me to believe that it's outside influence that's doing more manipulation of views. I can't say if YouTube is or not.
Well, didn't the YouTube CEO say that that she was going to remove any content on YouTube that was critical of the WHO? I mean,
Yes.
Who woke up and made her god of the internet?
Emperor of the Politburo of...
I mean, because that, when somebody makes a statement like that, that's exactly the wrong decision, frankly.
Yeah.
WHO should get withering criticism. And indeed, that's the whole concept of freedom of speech. That's why we allow obnoxious views, because we count on the counter-assault. If somebody says something that's morally repugnant, the crowd will come and say, wait a minute, you Nazi-loving bitch. I'm not saying she's a Nazi-loving bitch, but I mean, you got to have the ability to counter a provocative view. You can't just say, the provocative view can't be expressed. So I think that decision by the YouTube CEO should give the YouTube CEO her walking papers. She should be shit-canned.
Right.
That's a very important decision at precisely the wrong time. It should correctly
It's
damage.
Nazi stuff. Any book that comes out that has something that we don't like, you can't even see. We're going to burn it.
Right. Well, but back then, there was no monopoly in libraries, right? But here you have Google.
It's even worse. You're right.
YouTube is an effective monopoly, and an ineffective monopoly. And it really, if people think, I hope people think about this, particularly folks like Marsha Blackburn, Senator Blackburn, and others who have a real deep an abiding concern about this. We're sitting here April 26th. We're not far away from November 3rd. And if Google were to make such a decision, or YouTube to make such a decision in the crucial 72 hours leading up to the election, they could swing the election. If they just only put really damaging stuff on Trump and only really wonderful stuff on whoever the ultimate, Michelle Obama, or whoever might be the actual Democrat, you could really shift the views of last-minute voters.
They're doing a ton of things to make these kind of, small little incremental changes. I mean, you demonetize somebody over here, and that causes them to have to go do something else. They stop producing the content. That's why I always encourage people to become sponsors when they see these troll comments, because it's a subtle way that they're trying to prevent this information from coming out. So the only thing an individual out there watching can do to stop that activity is to do the opposite and to help this type of information to keep coming by becoming a sponsor. And it's only, for $2 a month, people are getting access to the video library. They can see exclusive videos that they don't see anywhere else. For $5 a month, they get to be involved in the Discord chats. $10 a month, they get the excellent Sunday with Charles screensaver. And when people join Patreon at $25 a month, after 3 months, they get a free
Robert Mueller Nothing Burger mug. I might have to change the mug option pretty soon so that I don't know if you get it every 3 months or if it's just a gift once, but I got to look into some of those gifts for sponsors.
Sure.
But Charles, we've been speaking for almost 2.5 hours.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Flies when you're not getting coronavirus. I'll see everybody tomorrow. We've got this great show with Ole Damagard and a surprise guest who has never appeared on Crowdsource the Truth before. I don't know that this guest has done any interviews at all for many, many years. This individual personally interacted with Bill Barr, and I have a ton of questions for him, so I hope that people will join us. You can also see tomorrow's show, in addition to Subscribestar and Patreon for Crowdsource the Truth. People can sponsor Ole on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies. All the co-host shows, Charles, they're simulcast on the co-hosts' Patreon channels so that the audience can fund them as well. It's a really wonderful idea that I stumbled across that helps a lot of independent journalists sustain their businesses and keep this information coming. So I appreciate all the sponsors that allow us to do that. And I appreciate you, Charles. We've been doing this show. This is the longest running show on Crowdsource the Truth.
There you go. My pleasure.
It's proof that not everybody hates me. And with that, we'll see you on Wednesday, right?
Right.
I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.